All the talk this week has been about the reconfiguration and the changes that are going to be made here. What are your thoughts on that? And were you ever approached with any feedback?
I was never personally asked, but I also don't really want to be asked. I don't feel like, for my opinion, it's not my job, and like just whatever it is, it is. At the end of the day, like I'm not sure why it's such a big deal. Like if they want to repave it and redo it, repave it and redo it. Like works for me, So I don't have much of a preference on it, and I'm gonna come back here as long as I have the opportunity and try to win and compete at a high level, regardless of whether we race on the big track or in a parking lot out back. So it doesn't matter to me.
What are your thoughts on the reconfiguration?
I don't think it's very good. I think the proper thing to do would probably be to build a short track. The cheapest thing to do is probably just leave the walls where they are and hope for the best. So, I don't think that worked out well for Texas. I don't think it worked out well for Bristol. I don't think it worked out well for Kentucky. I don't think any of those were very good. So, I think if you just keep winging it and don't get the driver's input, you're just going to keep getting the same conclusion.
Well, you're friends with Marcus, right? So do you go to him and say something, or do you just, or is it not? Is it up to them to come to you?
You would think that you would want the driver's input, and I think a lot of times the thought process is, well, we need to make the drivers uncomfortable, and instead, you wind up with a media press conference that winds up all about your track repave that you didn't ask any of the drivers about. So it is what it is.
So I'm assuming that means that you weren't consulted and you haven't heard any other drivers that had been consulted.
I hadn't really asked, so I'm just of the opinion that they don't care. They just do what they want.
This track surface has to be a little bit special to you, and obviously racing over it for the years. Is there any emotional attachment to getting out here on this surface for the last time today?
Well, look, I love coming to this particular racetrack just because of the the history that it has in my past. And I think obviously when you look back at the first win and everything that happened on that particular day and everything that went on is just forever there, right? So, it's always got a special place in it. And I think for the drivers in general, I think this place is special just because of the way that you race on it and you go about racing in general, here at this particular racetrack. So, it's just a fun place to race because it's just so challenging with the bumps and the asphalt and everything that comes with that. So I think this isn't the first time that we've had the repave talk in the uproar over the pavement. But I think it's the first time that everybody's had the plan pitched on them 3 days before the race and said, oh, iRacing designed this. And I've been in some really, really horrific iRacing events where the tracks drive nothing like the race cars, and it's not anything personal against iRacing. You just you wouldn't design an airplane and go fly it with passengers in it before you tested it. And I think the input that comes with the knowledge of things that come with the drivers and the way that the cars are and the things that happen are important. So you can't have a bunch of suits designing a racetrack.
Stuff in lane 2 and 3 to make it wider. We go to Texas, we spray it in lanes 2, 3, 4 at Texas to widen it. I mean, what are we doing? Now we're going to come here and run around here like Darlington? I just don't see it. And they want pack racing. You want pack racing too wide. Who's going to pass? Where are the lanes going to go? You know what I mean? Like, you're going to get to the straightaway and make it 3 wide and then try to blend back into 2 when you get to the corner? Simulation. Yeah, they've got it worked out.
Why the disconnect right now between drivers and racetrack owners?
Because they can do whatever the hell they want to do because nobody holds them accountable. They took Bristol and tore Bristol apart and turned Bristol actually into a pretty racy racetrack. All the drivers loved it, but of course they would argue that the fans don't. So there's a divide on that. There's a divide on pleasing the fans and the grandstands and putting on a show and what that show is. And there's videos on YouTube, Google it. I think Mark Martin shared it on his Twitter earlier this week with Tony Stewart. We're in the racing business. We race cars. There's going to be times where a guy figures it out and he runs off. That's racing. but they want to be in the entertainment business and put on crashes and fireballs and everything else. And I have been in a race that I haven't walked out of before, and that sucks. And then I missed 11 after that, you know. So I know what it's like to get hurt. I know what the opportunity presents itself, and coming to Atlanta with more banking, less racetrack to race does not sound appealing.
I think what they're trying to accomplish is not feasible under what the current configuration that they're going with.
Am I reading it correctly that it's different with Speedway Motorsports? That going back even a few years ago to like Kentucky PJ1 2017 when Steve Swift kind of did his own thing, is it the relationship kind of more disconnected here?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, you know, each track operator has their own agenda, right? IC and SMI, they do things a little bit differently. SMI is very, fan. What do the fans want? We just want to do whatever it takes to make the fans happy and put on a great show for them. IC is a little mix of like competition. Where the disconnect is like, where it's just we just gotta stop with the novelties. Like, be what we're good at. And let's just do that. Like, why are we trying to reach outside of what NASCAR has always been about for a long time? Trans Am is not as popular as us for a reason, right? I mean, we are big, heavy stock cars on ovals, and we're full contact. That's why people strive and want to be in NASCAR. And I hate that we're going away from that through novelty.
Yeah, I mean, just the direction of where we're going. I guess we're all wondering, why more banking, right? Why, like, what are we trying to achieve? I think that's probably the question we're all asking and wondering right now.
Does it produce safety concerns for you as to what this is going to lead to?
It depends on what the car's like, and what the next gen car is going to be. What speeds are we going to be carrying? What rules package are we going to be bringing? I think all those are questions. As soon as you say repave and you add more banking, it's like, okay, we're going more towards a Daytona type of racetrack. What does that mean, for speed, and what rules package are we going to bring to the table?
On the reconfiguration, a lot of the stuff was talked about with iRacing and simulation, building that, and Harvick gave a good quote about you can't build a plane and put passengers on it on a computer, and then put passengers in real life on it. So what do you think of that kind of mindset of going forward, that we're kind of building tracks and things like that on simulation?
I think it's a tool, and every tool has a limitation. Right, and no matter what you're doing, we use simulation all the time building our race cars, and I can tell you, we know there's limitations to it, because if we went 100% off that sim, we'd be off in left field, without bringing some real life data into it, right, and forming that out. So there's limitations to everything we do when we use our resources, and iRacing is a great tool. There's limitations to it, so. How do you replicate the video game track and put it identical to that in real life? I don't know how you do that. Yeah, maybe there's some technology and people can grade really well and figure that out. I don't know. God bless them if they can. I don't know how you do it.
I think if you ask any driver if they had it their way, they want to keep the racetracks old and worn out and slick because it takes so long for them to get here, to get to this stage. So I think you ask anybody, they're going to tell you that, especially a driver. And so I don't know, it definitely changed the way it races. I'm going to miss the old surface that we got now, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, it's not my call. Not any of our calls, I guess. But the higher powers are the ones making those calls, and we just have to deal with it.
I'd say officially there wasn't a lot of involvement, at least on my behalf, in any of this. But I think the idea behind it is definitely outside of the box that we've seen a lot of these mile-and-a-halves. As long as I've followed the sport, I guess my short time being a part of it, I think the idea on paper sounds great, but we'll see what all the details end up being. I think it's kind of, with a super speedway type of race in mind, I think the front straightaway might need some more work. So, I don't think all the details are out yet on it. Obviously the big one is reconfiguring and redesigning the corners, making more banking, narrowing the surface up a little bit, which is a wide racetrack. So we'll see what what happens with the front straightaway, but I think it could turn out to be a really interesting and new experience for us as drivers and the fans.
Do you wish that NASCAR would get more input from you guys on these types of?
It's a fine line, right? I think it's no secret. Like the drivers we have our agenda, right? When it comes to the racing package, when it comes to the tires we have, everyone's a little bit different, and sometimes even though we don't want to admit it, the drivers may not have what's best for the fans in mind. But I think when it comes to racing surface, I don't know many drivers that want a single file race. So everyone's experience is a little bit different, but it's something maybe we can learn from, or maybe for the next one down the list. You can't go off of one person's opinion or one group's opinion, and ultimately it's not our money going into the reconfiguration of Atlanta. It's SMI, so we're not paying for it. So I guess ultimately we don't have a lot of involvement in it. It is what it is. But as a driver, as me personally speaking, I just hope it turns out to be a great product for the fans. This is a track, one of the oldest surfaces, one of the most challenging that we have. When we lose that, what do we replace it with, right? And I think that's very important, that we replace it with something that continues to be very exciting.
From a few days ago, the announcement of the reconfiguration, a lot of different feedback. Some drivers are like, we don't care, we're going to race what we race, and some would like some more feedback in the decision. Where do you stand?
Yeah. Well, I don't have a problem with them using iRacing and using that as a tool to, figure out a racetrack. The only thing I feel like is tough is we don't know what the next gen car is going to be like, what kind of horsepower they're going to put on the car for mile and a halves, and so I feel like there's a ton of questions there. I personally don't love the fact that it's going to race like a restrictor plate track. It's going to be narrow and drafting and super high speed wrecks. So I think if that's what they want, then it's going to be a lot of big wrecks and probably a lot of injuries and stuff. So it's gonna, as narrow as this place is, so it's gonna be interesting.
You bring up iRacing, and that's something that you're obviously well accustomed to, and all of that stuff. So the next gen, you tested it some, and now you've run it some on iRacing. How similar do you think they are? Is there still a ways to go for iRacing with the next gen car, and does that kind of concern you with them building tracks around it?
I think the car is pretty similar on there. I don't know what access to data they have, but it seems like it's pretty similar to what I drove. So I think it's a good platform to use. I don't think it's bad by any means. I think they're pretty close for the development that is in the car right now. Once the teams get a hold of it, it'll probably change a little bit, and they'll have to keep up with that. But I'm not sure what resources they have